The Voynich Manuscript, the world's most mysterious book, in the archives of Yale University's Voynich Rare Book and Manuscript Library, tucked away in a climate-controlled vault, rests an object that has confounded scholars, cryptographers, and enthusiasts for over a century. A tattered vellum manuscript bound in leather, its pages filled with an unknown script, bizarre illustrations, and a mystery that has resisted all attempts at solution, known as the Voynich Manuscript, after the Polish book dealer who brought it to public attention in 1912. This document is more than just an ancient text. It is an enigma wrapped in parchment, a puzzle that has tested the limits of human ingenuity and curiosity. For generations, experts from fields as diverse as linguistics, cryptography, botany, astronomy, and art history have pored over its pages, hoping to unlock its secrets. Yet, despite the advances of modern science, from carbon dating to AI-powered text analysis, the Voynich Manuscript remains unbroken. Its purpose, origin, and meaning still shrouded in uncertainty. This book, estimated to have been created in the 15th century, stands as the world's most mysterious book, a testament to the gaps in our understanding of human history and the enduring power of the unknown. The Voynich Manuscript is not just a mystery because its text is unreadable. It is mysterious in every aspect of its existence. Its script is unlike any known language, ancient or modern, with no recognizable alphabet, grammar, or syntax. Its illustrations depict plants that do not correspond to any known species on Earth, astronomical diagrams that defy conventional understanding, and human figures engaged in unexplained rituals. Even its physical origins are unclear. Where was it written? By whom? For what purpose? Was it a work of science, a religious text, an elaborate hoax, or something else entirely? These questions have haunted researchers for decades, and each attempt to answer them only deepens the enigma. To understand the allure of the Voynich Manuscript, we must trace its journey from its creation in the medieval world to its current home in Yale, exploring its physical characteristics, its strange content, the countless attempts to decode it, and the theories that have emerged to explain its existence. In doing so, we not only confront a single mysterious book, but also the limits of human knowledge and the thrill of pursuing a secret that has eluded us for centuries. The modern story of the Voynich Manuscript begins with Wilfrid Michael Voynich, a Polish-born book dealer and bibliophile who made a career out of uncovering rare and valuable manuscripts. Born in 1865 in Kovno, now Kaunas, Lithuania, Voynich studied chemistry and botany before turning to the world of rare books, eventually establishing a successful dealership in London and later in New York. A man of insatiable curiosity and a keen eye for hidden treasures, Voynich was drawn to forgotten archives and neglected collections, where he hoped to find lost works of historical or literary significance. It was during one such expedition in 1912 that he stumbled upon the manuscript that would later bear his name. The setting was the Villa Mondragon, a sprawling estate near Rome that had once been the summer residence of the Jesuit order. At the time, the Jesuits were in the process of selling off parts of their extensive library, which included thousands of rare books and manuscripts accumulated over centuries. Voynich, who had traveled to Italy in search of valuable texts, was granted access to the Villa Mondragon's archives, where he sifted through piles of forgotten documents. Among these, he found a small, tattered manuscript bound in brown leather, its pages yellowed with age, its text written in an unfamiliar script, and its margins filled with strange drawings. The manuscript was accompanied by a letter, dated 1666, written by Johannes Marcus Marci, a Bohemian physician and scholar, to Athanasius Kircher, a prominent Jesuit scholar and polymath. Marci's letter would become a crucial piece of the puzzle, as it provided the first known account of the manuscript's origins, or at least what was believed to be its origins at the time. Marci's letter stated that the manuscript had once belonged to Emperor Rudolf II of the Holy Roman Empire, R 1576-1612, who had purchased it for 600 ducats, a substantial sum at the time, from a monk of Prague. According to Marci, the monk had claimed that the manuscript was the work of Roger Bacon, a 13th century English philosopher and scientist known for his experimental approach and his interest in cryptography. Marci further noted that he had tried to decode the manuscript himself, without success, and he begged Kircher, who was renowned for his expertise in languages and cryptography, to take on the task. Kircher, who was one of the most learned men of his time, never publicly acknowledged solving the manuscript, and it is unclear whether he ever made any progress. After Kircher's death in 1680, the manuscript passed through various hands, eventually finding its way into the Jesuit library at Villa Mondragon, where Voynich discovered it over 2 centuries later. Voynich was immediately captivated by the manuscript. He recognized that it was unlike any other text he had ever seen. Its script was alien, its illustrations bizarre, and its provenance linked to some of the most prominent figures of the Renaissance. He purchased the manuscript from the Jesuits and brought it back to his home in London, where he began to study it intensely. He spent years researching its history, consulting with scholars, and attempting to decode its text, but he made little progress. Nevertheless, he was convinced of its authenticity and its importance, and he spent the rest of his life promoting the manuscript, hoping that someone would eventually unlock its secrets. Voynich died in 1930, leaving the manuscript to his wife, Ethel Lillian Voynich herself, a noted writer, best known for her novel, The Gadfly. Ethel Voynich continued to preserve the manuscript and encourage research into it until her death in 1960, at which point she bequeathed it to Yale University's Voynich Library, where it remains today, catalogued as MS 408. The discovery of the Voynich manuscript by Wilfrid Voynich was a turning point in the history of the document. Before 1912, it had been largely forgotten, hidden away in the Jesuit archives, its existence known only to a handful of scholars. Voynich's discovery brought it to public attention, sparking widespread interest and debate. Suddenly, the manuscript was no longer just a forgotten curiosity. It became a global mystery, attracting the attention of cryptographers, linguists, and historians around the world. Voynich's role in preserving and promoting the manuscript cannot be overstated. Without his curiosity and dedication, the manuscript might have remained hidden forever, its secrets lost to history. Yet, even as he brought the manuscript to light, Voynich himself was unable to solve its mystery, a mystery that would outlive him by decades, and that continues to baffle experts today. While Marseille's 1666 letter provides a starting point for the Voynich manuscript's provenance, tracing its origins before it came into Emperor Rudolf II's possession is a task fraught with uncertainty. Rudolf II, who ruled the Holy Roman Empire from 1576 to 1612, was a passionate collector of art, science, and oddities. His court in Prague was a hub of intellectual activity, attracting scholars, artists, and alchemists from across Europe. He was known to collect rare manuscripts, and he was particularly interested in cryptography and the occult, making it plausible that he would have purchased a mysterious manuscript like the Voynich one. The 600 ducats he allegedly paid for it suggests that he believed it to be a valuable and important text, possibly the work of a renowned scholar like Roger Bacon. The claim that the manuscript was written by Roger Bacon is one of the oldest and most persistent theories about its origin. Bacon, a 13th century Franciscan friar, was a pioneer in experimental science, writing on topics such as optics, astronomy, and chemistry. He was also known to have an interest in cryptography, and he wrote several works in code, leading some to believe that the Voynich manuscript could be one of his lost works. However, there is no concrete evidence to support this claim. Bacon's known works are written in Latin, using standard medieval script, and they focus on topics that are very different from the content of the Voynich manuscript. Moreover, carbon dating of the manuscript's vellum has placed its creation in the early 15th century, over 150 years after Bacon's death in 1292, making it impossible for him to have written it. Despite this, the Bacon theory persisted for decades, fueled by the allure of linking the manuscript to a famous historical figure and the desire to find a plausible author. After Rudolf II's death in 1612, the manuscript's fate becomes unclear. It is likely that it remained in Prague for some time, passing through the hands of various members of the imperial court or scholars associated with the university. Some historians believe that it may have been owned by Jacobus Horsecki de Tepenek, a Bohemian physician who served as Rudolf II's personal doctor and who was known to have owned other rare manuscripts. Horsecki was a contemporary of Marseille, and it is possible that he passed the manuscript on to Marseille, who then sent it to Kircher. However, there is no direct evidence to confirm this link, and the manuscript's whereabouts between 1612 and 1666 remain a mystery. After Kircher's death in 1680, the manuscript was inherited by his student, Johann Baptist Metzger, who was a librarian at the Jesuit college in Rome. Metzger later bequeathed the manuscript to the Jesuit library at Villa Mondragon, where it remained until Voynich discovered it in 1912. The Jesuits, who were known for their dedication to preserving knowledge, had catalogued the manuscript, but had made no attempt to decode it, perhaps viewing it as an unsolvable curiosity. It is worth noting that the Jesuit library at Villa Mondragon contained many other rare and unusual manuscripts, but none captured the public imagination quite like the Voynich manuscript. In recent years, scholars have attempted to fill in the gaps in the manuscript's provenance using a variety of techniques, including analysis of the vellum, the ink, and the binding. For example, researchers have identified watermarks on the vellum that suggest it was produced in northern Italy, possibly in the region around Venice or Bologna in the early 15th century. This places the manuscript's creation in a time and place known for its vibrant intellectual and artistic activity, where manuscripts were produced in large numbers for wealthy patrons. However, the specific workshop or scribe responsible for the manuscript remains unknown. Similarly, analysis of the ink has shown that it is consistent with 15th century ink recipes, further supporting the carbon dating results. Despite these advances, the manuscript's author and original owner remain unknown, leaving a crucial piece of the puzzle missing. After Ethel Voynich's death in 1960, the manuscript was bequeathed to Yale University's Voynich Rare Book and Manuscript Library, a fitting home for one of the world's most valuable and mysterious documents. The Voynich Library, which opened in 1963, is dedicated to preserving and making available rare books, manuscripts, and other literary artifacts, and it houses some of the most important collections in the world, including the Gutenberg Bible and the papers of Gertrude Stein. The decision to bequeath the Voynich manuscript to Yale was a deliberate one. Ethel Voynich wanted to ensure that the manuscript would be preserved for future generations, and that scholars would have access to it to continue their research. Upon arriving at Yale, the manuscript underwent a thorough conservation process to stabilize its fragile pages and binding. The vellum, which had become brittle with age, was treated to prevent further deterioration, and the binding was repaired to ensure that the manuscript could be handled safely. The library also created high-quality reproductions of the manuscript, allowing scholars to study it without risking damage to the original. In 2009, the Voynich Library took a historic step by making high-resolution digital images of the entire manuscript available online, free of charge. This move opened up the manuscript to a global audience, allowing anyone with an internet connection to study its pages, examine its illustrations, and attempt to decode its text. The digital release sparked a new wave of interest in the manuscript, with amateur cryptographers, hobbyists, and scholars from around the world joining the effort to unlock its secrets. Today, the original Voynich manuscript is stored in a climate-controlled vault at the Voynich Library, where it is protected from light, humidity, and temperature fluctuations. It is only brought out for special exhibitions or for scholarly study, and even then, it is handled with the utmost care. The library's staff works tirelessly to preserve the manuscript, using the latest conservation techniques to ensure that it remains intact for future generations. The digital version of the manuscript, which is available on the Voynich Library's website, has become a valuable resource for researchers, allowing them to zoom in on individual characters, examine the details of the illustrations, and compare different sections of the text without having to travel to Yale. The decision to make the manuscript publicly available online has had a profound impact on Voynich research. Before 2009, access to the manuscript was limited to a small number of scholars who could travel to Yale. But now, anyone with an interest can study it in detail. This has led to a surge in amateur research, with many people submitting their own theories and decoding attempts to the library, and to online communities dedicated to the Voynich manuscript. While most of these attempts have been unsuccessful, some have raised interesting questions and provided new perspectives on the manuscript. The Voynich Library has also established a dedicated team of curators and scholars to manage the manuscript and to coordinate research efforts, ensuring that the latest findings are shared with the public and with the academic community. Voynich manuscript is a physical object as mysterious as its content, and its physical characteristics provide valuable clues about its origin and creation. The manuscript is bound in a brown leather cover, which is likely not the original binding. The current binding is thought to date from the 17th century, possibly from the time when it was in the possession of the Jesuits. The cover is worn and tattered, with some damage to the spine, but it remains intact, protecting the pages inside. The manuscript measures approximately 23.5 cm by 16 cm, 9.25 inches by 6.25 inches, making it a relatively small book, easy to carry, a detail that has led some scholars to suggest that it was intended for personal use, rather than for a library or a public collection. The pages of the manuscript are made of vellum, a material made from the skin of sheep, calves, or goats, which was commonly used for manuscripts in the medieval period. Vellum is durable and long-lasting, which is why the Voynich manuscript has survived for over 600 years. The manuscript contains 240 pages, though some pages are missing. Scholars believe that at least 16 pages have been lost over the centuries. The pages are numbered in modern times from 1 to 240, though the original manuscript had no page numbers. The vellum pages are yellowed with age, and some have minor stains or tears, but overall, they are in remarkably good condition, considering their age. Carbon dating of the vellum, conducted in 2009 by the University of Arizona's Accelerator Mass Spectrometry Laboratory, placed the creation of the manuscript between 1404 and 1438 CE with a 95% confidence interval. This places the manuscript's origin in the early 15th century, during the Renaissance, a time when manuscript production was flourishing in Europe. The carbon dating results also confirmed that the vellum was produced from the skins of at least 14 different animals, suggesting that the manuscript was created over a period of time, rather than all at once. This is consistent with the fact that the script and illustrations show some variation throughout the manuscript, indicating that the scribe and illustrator may have worked on it over several years. The structure of the manuscript is divided into several distinct sections based on the content of the illustrations. While the text is continuous throughout, the illustrations fall into four main categories: botanical, astronomical, biological, or zoological, and cryptographic, or text only. These sections are not clearly marked in the manuscript, but scholars have identified them based on the subject matter of the drawings. The botanical section, which makes up the largest portion of the manuscript, contains illustrations of over 100 different plants, none of which correspond to any known species. The astronomical section features diagrams of the sun, moon, stars, and planets, arranged in circular patterns that resemble astrolabes or zodiac charts. The biological section depicts human figures, mostly women, bathing in pools of water, surrounded by strange plants and creatures. The cryptographic section contains no illustrations, only dense blocks of text, leading some scholars to believe that it may contain the most important or secret information in the manuscript. The manuscript's layout is consistent with medieval manuscripts, with text arranged in columns, usually 2 columns per page, and illustrations placed in the margins or in the center of the page. The script is written in a flowing, cursive hand, with no punctuation or capitalization, and the letters are consistent throughout the manuscript, suggesting that it was written by a single scribe. However, there are minor variations in the script, particularly in the later pages, which may indicate that the scribe was fatigued or that the manuscript was completed over a long period of time. The ink used in the manuscript is a dark brown color, which has faded slightly over time but remains legible. Analysis of the ink has shown that it contains iron gall, a common ink recipe used in medieval manuscripts, which consists of iron sulfate, gallic acid, and water. This further confirms that the manuscript was produced in the 15th century, as iron gall ink was widely used during that period. The most striking feature of the Voynich manuscript is its script, a series of characters that are unlike any known alphabet or writing system. The script is written in a cursive style, with characters that are fluid and interconnected, making it difficult to distinguish individual letters. The characters vary in shape and size, but they can be grouped into several distinct categories: looped characters, angular characters, and characters with tails or flourishes. Some characters resemble letters from the Latin alphabet, such as A, O, and L, while others are completely unique, with no obvious counterparts in any known language. Scholars have spent decades analyzing the script, trying to determine whether it is a genuine, unknown language, a coded version of a known language, or an elaborate hoax. One of the key observations about the script is its consistency. The same characters appear throughout the manuscript, and they follow a consistent pattern of arrangement. This suggests that the script is not random. It has a structure that resembles a natural language, with words, phrases, and sentences. For example, the script contains spaces between words, and there are patterns in the frequency of certain characters and character combinations, similar to the way that letters like E and T are more common in English. Linguists have conducted extensive statistical analysis of the script, comparing it to known languages to see if it matches any patterns. For example, in most natural languages, the frequency of certain letters follows a predictable distribution, known as Zipf's law, which states that the frequency of a word is inversely proportional to its rank in the frequency table. The Voynich script follows Zipf's law, which suggests that it is not random, but rather has the characteristics of a natural language. Additionally, the script contains repeated character sequences, which could be words or phrases, and there are variations in the script that could indicate different parts of speech, such as nouns, verbs, or adjectives. However, despite these similarities to natural languages, the Voynich script has several features that make it unlike any known language. For one, it has no recognizable alphabet. The characters are unique, and there is no overlap with the Latin, Greek, Cyrillic, Arabic, or any other known writing system. Additionally, the script has no punctuation, no capitalization, and no diacritical marks, such as accents or umlauts, which are common in most languages. The script also has a high number of repeated characters, with some characters appearing far more frequently than others, something that is not typical of natural languages, where letter frequencies are more balanced. Another key observation is that the script does not contain any obvious loanwords or borrowed characters from other languages, which is unusual for a medieval manuscript. Most manuscripts from this period were written in Latin, and even those written in vernacular languages, such as Italian or French, contained Latin loanwords or characters. The Voynich script, however, is entirely unique, with no traces of any known language. This has led some scholars to suggest that it is a constructed language, a language invented by the manuscript's author. or a secret code that was designed to be unbreakable. The question of whether the script is a hoax has been debated for decades. Some scholars argue that the manuscript is an elaborate fake, created by a 16th or 17th century forger who wanted to sell it to a wealthy collector like Rudolf II. They point out that the script could have been created by combining elements of different alphabets and inventing new characters, and that the illustrations could have been drawn to look mysterious and exotic. However, there are several arguments against the hoax theory. For one, the carbon dating of the vellum places the manuscript's creation in the 15th century, which would mean that the hoax was perpetrated over 600 years ago, long before the modern era of cryptography and hoaxing. Additionally, the script's consistency and adherence to Zipf's law suggest that it was not created randomly. It would have required a great deal of skill and effort to create a fake script that behaves like a natural language. Finally, the illustrations, while bizarre, are highly detailed and consistent, suggesting that they were created by a skilled artist who had a clear vision of what they wanted to depict. If the Voynich manuscript script is mysterious, its illustrations are even more so. The manuscript contains over 200 illustrations, divided into 4 main categories: botanical, astronomical, biological, and cryptographic. Each category of illustrations is unique, and none of them correspond to any known natural or astronomical phenomena, adding to the manuscript's enigma. The illustrations are drawn in a simple yet detailed style, using ink and watercolor, with colors that have faded over time but still retain their vibrancy. The artist who created the illustrations was clearly skilled, with a keen eye for detail and a consistent style throughout the manuscript. The botanical section, which makes up the largest portion of the manuscript, pages 116, contains illustrations of 113 different plants, each drawn with remarkable detail. The plants are depicted with roots, stems, leaves, and flowers, and each plant is accompanied by a block of text, presumably describing it. However, none of these plants correspond to any known species on Earth. Some of the plants resemble familiar plants, such as ferns, roses, or lilies, but with subtle differences that make them unrecognizable. Others are completely alien, with bizarre shapes, unusual leaves, and strange flowers that have no counterpart in nature. For example, one plant has leaves that resemble hands, while another has a stem that twists into a spiral, with flowers that look like stars. Botanists have spent decades studying these illustrations, trying to identify any known plant species, but they have been unsuccessful. This has led to several theories. Perhaps the plants are imaginary, created by the manuscript's author. Perhaps they are medicinal plants that have since become extinct. Or perhaps they are plants from a remote region of the world that was unknown to Europeans in the 15th century. However, none of these theories have been proven, and the botanical illustrations remain a mystery. The astronomical section, pages 117-138, features diagrams of the sun, moon, stars, and planets, arranged in circular patterns that resemble astrolabes or zodiac charts. The diagrams are drawn with great precision, with the sun and moon depicted as large, round objects, and the stars as small dots arranged in constellations. Some of the diagrams show the planets orbiting the sun, which is notable because the heliocentric model of the solar system, with the sun at the center, was not widely accepted in Europe until the 16th century, long after the manuscript was created. This has led some scholars to suggest that the manuscript's author had advanced astronomical knowledge that was ahead of their time. Other diagrams show what appear to be comets, constellations, and celestial spheres, but none of them match any known astronomical charts from the 15th century. The astronomical illustrations also include several circular diagrams with radiating lines, which may represent astrological charts or planetary alignments, but their exact meaning is unclear. The biological section, pages 139-185, is perhaps the most bizarre and intriguing part of the manuscript. It depicts human figures, mostly women, bathing in pools of water, surrounded by strange plants and creatures. The women are drawn in a stylized manner, with long hair and flowing robes, and they are often shown standing or floating in the water. The pools are connected by intricate networks of pipes or channels, suggesting that they are part of a larger system, possibly a bathhouse or a medicinal spring. The plants and creatures surrounding the pools are as strange as the botanical illustrations. Some resemble lizards, snakes, or birds, while others are completely unrecognizable, with multiple limbs or unusual shapes. Some scholars have suggested that the biological section depicts a healing ritual or a religious ceremony, while others believe that it represents a mythical or allegorical scene. However, there is no consensus on the meaning of these illustrations, and they remain one of the most mysterious aspects of the manuscript. The cryptographic section, pages 186-240, contains no illustrations, only dense blocks of text. This section is the most densely written part of the manuscript, with text arranged in 2 columns per page and no spaces between paragraphs. The script in this section is slightly different from the rest of the manuscript, with smaller, more compact characters, leading some scholars to believe that it contains the most important or secret information. The text in this section is also more repetitive than in other sections, with certain character sequences appearing more frequently. Some scholars have suggested that this section may be a key to decoding the manuscript, containing a cipher or a key that explains the script. However, no such key has been found, and the cryptographic section remains as mysterious as the rest of the manuscript. One of the most striking features of the illustrations is their consistency. The artist who created them used a consistent style throughout the manuscript, with similar colors, lines, and proportions. This suggests that the illustrations were created by a single artist who worked closely with the scribe to create a cohesive document. The illustrations are also integrated with the text often surrounding the illustrations or placed directly below them, suggesting that the text and illustrations are closely related. This integration implies that the illustrations are not just decorative. They are an essential part of the manuscript's content, providing clues to the meaning of the text. The first known attempt to decode the Voynich manuscript was made by Athanasius Kircher, the Jesuit scholar who received the manuscript from Johannes Marcus Mars in 1666. Kircher was one of the most learned men of his time, with expertise in linguistics, cryptography, astronomy, and theology. He was known for his ability to decode ancient scripts and ciphers, and he had written several works on cryptography, including Polygraphia, 1663, a comprehensive treatise on codes and ciphers. When Marseille sent him the Voynich manuscript, Kircher was already a renowned expert in the field, and Marseille hoped that he would be able to unlock its secrets. Kircher spent several years studying the manuscript, attempting to decode its script and interpret its illustrations. He approached the manuscript with the assumption that it was a coded version of a known language, possibly Latin, Greek, or Hebrew languages that were commonly used in medieval manuscripts. He tried various cryptographic techniques, including substitution ciphers, where each character is replaced by another character or symbol, and transposition ciphers, where the order of characters is rearranged. He also studied the illustrations, hoping that they would provide clues to the text's meaning. For example, he believed that the botanical illustrations might correspond to medicinal plants, and that the text might describe their uses. Despite his expertise, Kircher was unable to decode the manuscript. In a letter to Marseille, he admitted that he had made little progress, writing that the script was unknown to me, and I have not been able to find any clue to its meaning. He suggested that the manuscript might be written in a secret language invented by its author, or that it might be a hoax. However, he did not rule out the possibility that it was a genuine work of science or philosophy, and he continued to study it until his death in 1680. Kircher's attempts to decode the manuscript were documented in his personal papers, which are now stored in the Vatican Library, but they contain no evidence that he made any significant progress. His failure to decode the manuscript set a precedent that would be repeated by countless scholars in the centuries to come. Kircher's approach to decoding the manuscript was limited by the cryptographic techniques available at the time. In the 17th century, cryptography was still in its infancy, and most ciphers were relatively simple, using substitution or transposition methods. The Voynich manuscript's script, however, is far more complex than any cipher that Kircher would have encountered, and it is likely that the techniques he used were insufficient to break it. Additionally, Kircher's assumption that the manuscript was a coded version of a known language may have led him down the wrong path. If the script is a genuine unknown language, then substitution ciphers would be useless, as there is no known language to substitute from. Despite his failure, Kircher's role in the history of the Voynich manuscript is important. He was the first scholar to take the manuscript seriously, and his attempts to decode it laid the groundwork for future research. His correspondence with Marseille also provides valuable information about the manuscript's provenance, including its connection to Rudolf II and the claim that it was the work of Roger Bacon. Kircher's failure also highlighted the manuscript's complexity, suggesting that it was not a simple cipher, but something far more mysterious. When Wilfrid Voynich discovered the manuscript in 1912, he immediately became convinced that it was the work of Roger Bacon, the 13th century Franciscan friar and scientist. This belief was based on the 1666 letter from Marseille to Kircher, which claimed that the manuscript had been purchased by Rudolf II from a monk of Prague, who attributed it to Bacon. Voynich was a great admirer of Bacon, and he saw the manuscript as a lost work of the scholar, which would revolutionize our understanding of medieval science and cryptography. Voynich spent years researching the connection between the manuscript and Roger Bacon. He traveled to Europe, visiting libraries and archives to study Bacon's known works, comparing his handwriting and style to the Voynich manuscript script. He also consulted with experts in medieval handwriting, hoping to find a match between Bacon's hand and the script of the manuscript. However, these efforts were unsuccessful. Bacon's known works are written in Latin, using a standard medieval script, which is very different from the Voynich manuscript's unique script. Additionally, carbon dating later proved that the manuscript was created over 150 years after Bacon's death, making it impossible for him to have written it. Despite this evidence, Voynich refused to abandon the Bacon theory. He argued that the manuscript could have been a copy of a lost work by Bacon, written by a later scribe. He also suggested that Bacon had invented a secret language to encode his scientific discoveries, which is why the script is unknown. Voynich spent years promoting this theory, giving lectures and publishing articles about the manuscript, and he even offered a reward to anyone who could decode it, hoping that the decoded text would prove that it was Bacon's work. Voynich also attempted to decode the manuscript himself, using a variety of cryptographic techniques. He believed that the script was a cipher, and he tried substituting Voynich characters with Latin letters, based on the frequency of characters in the manuscript. For example, he noted that the character that resembles a Y appears more frequently than any other character, so he assumed that it corresponded to the letter E, the most common letter in Latin. However, this approach did not yield any meaningful text, and Voynich was unable to make any progress. He also studied the illustrations, hoping that they would provide clues to the text's meaning, but he was unable to link them to any known works by Bacon or to any medieval scientific texts. Voynich's obsession with the Bacon theory may have hindered his ability to decode the manuscript. By focusing on Bacon as the author, he limited his approach to techniques that would be applicable to a 13th century Latin text, rather than considering other possibilities, such as the manuscript being written in an unknown language or a constructed language. Additionally, his public promotion of the Bacon theory may have influenced other scholars, leading them to focus on the same approach, rather than exploring new ideas. Despite his efforts, Voynich died in 1930 without having decoded the manuscript, and his belief that it was Bacon's work was eventually discredited by carbon dating and linguistic analysis. In the years following Voynich's death, the manuscript attracted the attention of some of the world's leading cryptographers, who hoped to unlock its secrets using the latest cryptographic techniques. The early 20th century was a golden age of cryptography, with the development of new methods for breaking codes and ciphers, and many experts believed that the Voynich manuscript would soon be decoded. However, these attempts were met with repeated failure, leading to frustration and disappointment. One of the first prominent cryptographers to attempt decoding the manuscript was William Friedman, a leading American cryptographer who worked for the U.S. Army Signal Corps and later for the National Security Agency, NSA. Friedman is widely regarded as the father of modern cryptography, and he was responsible for breaking several complex ciphers during World War II. In the 1940s, Friedman became interested in the Voynich manuscript, and he assembled a team of cryptographers to study it. The team spent several